I say that when I'm speaking, I'm like, there comes a time where we've got to stop doing this and start doing this, right? It was a game changer for me when I started doing that. I still have to call myself on some shit sometimes. It's an everyday struggle to try to, be what you say you are all about, right? Sometimes we all fall short of what we say we stand for. But to acknowledge that and then just dust yourself off and get back on track, that takes a special type of character.
Hey guys, check out the 2023 Street Cop Conference, April 23rd through the 28th, Gaylord Convention Center. It's going to be the event of the year. Keynote speakers include Rob O'Neill, the guy who killed bin Laden, Kyle Carpenter, the youngest living Medal of Honor recipient, Navy SEAL Jason Redmond, Fox News host Tommy Lahren, Marine Corps Special Forces and Leadership Coach Cody Alford, Sheriff Wayne Ivey, Sheriff David Clark, and Sheriff Mark Lamb. It's going to be one hell of an event. And on top of that, we have all of our instructors and additional instructors from other companies going to be at the event, giving you everything they know for you to have a successful career and get the results you want to get in the field as a police officer. On top of attending the event, you'll get face-to-face time with every instructor attending the event, and all the keynote speakers will spend time with you. We got special events all week, giveaways, nightlife. It's going to be really, really worth your time, energy, and effort. I promise you, you will not regret it for a second. To register for the conference, check out streetcop.com, click conference, and everything you need will be there on the homepage. If you are looking for a room, just click book a room. The block has been sold out at the Gaylord Opryland Convention Center, but there are many hotels nearby within a walking distance of the event. You don't want to miss out on this opportunity. We will see you there.
111, 110.
You training to be a street cop?
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Street Cop Training Podcast. I'm your host, founder, and CEO of Street Cop Training. My name is Dennis Benino, and I'm here with Ann Carrizales in studio. This is my second time, actually. Yeah, the crowd's got to settle down. We're trying to record a podcast here.
Yeah, settle down.
This is our second time doing the intro because my phone rang. Ann ran out of water because apparently she's a fucking camel. Frankie ran off to get... You're sucking down water like we're going on a trek through the desert. Yeah, I get it. Me too. Anyway, so we've talked about a lot of things in the past. You're here doing the New Jersey Women in Law Enforcement event.
Yeah.
For NJWLE for their conference this week, which I'll be coming to eat lunch at tomorrow.
Excited about that. You've been before?
I spoke at it last year.
Awesome.
I offended some people.
Did you?
Yeah.
No, not you. All right.
So tomorrow, Thursday, you're speaking at this event. Mm-hmm. What is that going to entail? Obviously, surviving, being a survivor, but is it tailored towards women only, or is it tailored towards cops universally? Did you change it for this event? You tell me.
I do change it depending on what the goal is. What's the training need like, right? And what I find that every time I'm invited to come speak at a women's conference, it's mainly when they bring me in, it's mainly kind of circling around, give us some inspiration, right? I think the need to hit the reset button is not just specific to women. So to answer that question, is it just, for women or is it for everyone? I would say that everybody could benefit from listening to what I have to say. If you're at all in a point in your life where you are just in need of a reset, maybe you're in a funk, whatever. So I think along those lines of inspiring, motivating, kind of giving you a shakeup of a fresh perspective on maybe what you may be going through. This happens to be a women's conference. There is no energy at any law enforcement conference like you get at a women's conference. It's unmatched.
That's because you haven't been to the Street Cop Conference, but you're coming this year.
I am.
I'm going to hold you to that, and then after that, you're going to go, okay, all right, listen, I said that, but this shit's fucking nuts. And I say that with a lot of audacity because Frankie hasn't been to one yet, but I'm telling you, like, we're going to
Frankie, are you going to this next one?
Hell yeah, he's going.
Oh, yeah, I'll be there.
Oh, how exciting. I will see you there.
Yes.
And my girl, Tommy?
Oh, yeah, you want to meet her?
I have met her.
Okay, you want to meet her again?
I am. I'm going to go on her show.
Oh, are you going on a show?
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
phenomenal.
I know you're
then I'm not doing the intro. You do your own thing.
What do you mean?
At the event. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, this is Ann Carrizales.
No. Yeah. We've already been texting.
Excellent.
In fact, I was texting her and I was telling her that I was coming there to receive this award. And she's like, I'm going to be there. I'm speaking there. And so I didn't know she spoke there for you guys previously. And so
We have
I
a
said,
really nice
"That's
relationship with her."
exciting. I said, that's exciting because she was wanting me to do her show. And so I told her, look, I'll just let you know whenever I'm in that neck of the woods. So it kind of worked
Why
out.
don't you do it while you were there? Why don't you do her show while you're there?
Well, that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah,
we're
okay,
going
cool.
to do kind of like we're doing this now.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's good shit.
So
All right, so you back to
get
this.
back to your question, no, I think everybody could benefit from it. Do I switch it up? I do sometimes. I'm a real big energy person, so I like to watch and feel and as you know, getting in front of people when you're up there talking, you can see a lot from up there. And if you are one of those people that tends to be very intuitive with reading people and if you're in any way, shape, or form empathetic and you can just kind of pick up people's energy. I'm real sensitive to that type of human energy, and I'm a people connector. I will connect with you, or I really will not connect with you. And what I will connect with is that I'm not trying to connect with you. You know what I'm saying? So I like to, when I get up there, feel that energy. And sometimes, like with this conference, I get the chance to meet people and spend a day or two before I actually get up there, which is always great because then you get a really great feel for what the energy is like. So I do change it up sometimes, but I would say this: it's not what I talk about is not specific to women. It's not gender specific, and it's not cop specific. While I talk about things that happen to me while I was working, on duty, at the end of the day, it's a people story. And I think that's why it resonates with so many people, law enforcement or not.
It's interesting. You said you're sensitive to reading the room, and you can tell. I'm really good at this, and I have a test at the beginning of my class, and that tells me who I'm going to be dealing with that day. And when that test, and I'll tell you off the air because I don't want to let people know what it is, because a lot of people who listen to this podcast come to the training program, but I know immediately who I'm dealing with, and I know that I'm going to have to earn it a little bit more.
Right.
Now, look, when people show up at this point in my career, literally there might be one or two people in the room out of 100, 150 people who are like, I don't know who you are. And I'm like, that's fucking amazing because now I get to convince you to be on our team. Everybody else here is sold. So for me, sometimes, I almost know for a fact when I teach proactive patrol, that's one course that I teach, and I also teach New Jersey case law. Typically, case law in New Jersey or even in other states comes with a lot of command staff coming, and I have no fucking idea why there's a chip on their shoulder when they walk through the door. I don't know what the angst is, but I know that typically 95% of the time when I teach case law, I'm going to have to earn them. And then usually I never lose, really, and I'm not trying to sound like a dickhead. I'm sure people leave once in a while, and there's one person who's like, fuck that guy, right?
Yeah.
I guess, right? It is what it is. But so I thought it was interesting that you said that because what people don't know as an instructor is that that's a big thing for us to be able to do is read the room, and you could read it almost immediately.
Right. Well, not every instructor, like you said, can or does. But I also think it has a lot to do with the content. What are we talking about here? If you're going to talk about legal update, that might be a lot more dry than.
Oh, I fucking murder it. I'd make it the most exciting shit you'll ever see in your life.
Than the average class, right? But every now and then you get an instructor like you who can take something that's dry and make it fun, still make it interesting.
Oh, it's good.
Right? That's a craft.
You got to come to my class when I come to Houston.
Of course, I'll come to
For
your
real?
class. Yeah,
Oh,
just
sick.
let me know.
Yeah, I will.
But it's a craft. It's something that you hone in on that and you perfect that craft. I also think there's a certain element to that you can't teach. Like either you are going to connect with people and you're good at it, or you're not. You could have somebody up there that's got every PhD, every degree you could get in a certain subject matter, and they can't connect with people, and then that's it. It's a moot point, right? But then I come on and I'm talking about things that I think people can really relate to, because again, this is a people thing. We're talking about people issues. B, that people want to talk about, but they're not willing to be the first one to bring it up, or even the second or third one to add commentary to the dialogue, right? And I'm just so willing to do it and talk about it in such a way that I think is disarming for people. Because I'm going to come out and I'm just going to show you mine, and if you want to show me yours, great. If not, at the very least, it's going to leave people sitting there going, "Huh." I thought I was the only one that was thinking that or saying that or going through that. So I think it has a lot to do with, what we're talking about, and then somebody's ability to just really kind of, I don't really ever feel when I'm talking, when I'm presenting the fight after the fight, I really don't ever feel like I have to win people over, like I have to work for them to laugh or for them to pay attention, because I'm just telling you a story about me, and it's probably your story too. But when I'm training, when I'm teaching classes, police training outside of that, it is a different dynamic. And so that's what I think is super important, that the instructor be able to kind of tell the difference. When is it time to put it on this way, and when is it time to take it off and do it that way? And I have the opportunity. I'm really blessed in that I have the opportunity to experience kind of each aspect of that.
It takes a lot to travel somewhere, and it's a pain in the balls. The traveling, the jet lagged, you're hungry, you're showing up here to do this. Mm-hmm. You're going to this event on Wednesday, you're not speaking. I imagine you're going to be there Wednesday, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thursday you get to speak, and then you're obviously going to go back home. Mm-hmm. But it's daunting. You have kids, you have a family in Texas, you may have taken off work. Mm. What I'm alluding to is, I know it's not for the money, so what's the why? Why are you doing this?
I recently started working with an incredible woman, and she asked me, "What's your life mission?" And I had never had anyone ask me that. What's my life mission?
She beat me to it.
And she was like, blah, 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 blah. She stated hers, and I just, everything was, all these things were coming to my mind. So I guess that's kind of what you're asking me. Why do you do this? It's what is your mission? What are you trying to do? Because you're not going to get rich doing this, right? You're going to have your fair share of haters. You're going to have people out there that are going to appreciate you, and then people that are just going to try to tear you down. So what is it? What drives me? I'll tell you what drives me. I truly believe that I'm sitting here with you, Dennis, only because God's grace. He said, "It's not time. I got something I want you to do." Now, for somebody like me who is a believer and who really has a lot of faith in that, and I have my own personal relationship with God, and while like I've said it before, I know everybody doesn't believe in God, but I do, and whatever that looks like for you. My son says this. Maybe for some people it's the universe. Maybe for another it's Allah. Maybe for everybody. Most people have something that they're putting their faith in that's bigger than themselves. And so for me, it's God, and I believe I'm alive because of that. Now, why do I do it? Because I feel like I'm supposed to do it. Because I know how dark and how hopeless it can feel when you are in the fight after the fight and you're losing and you have no idea what punch combinations to throw, and you feel like you're getting your ass beat round after round, day after day, and you are just struggling to hang on. And I know how hard that can get, and I never even became suicidal. So then I have to think about it from the perspective of those who either have had suicidal thoughts, ideations, or have committed suicide, and thought to myself, wow, this many people each year, just if we're just talking law enforcement alone, have died by suicide. So that means it gets even way worse than where I was at, because I didn't get that far back. And so for me, why do I do it is because I wish sometimes, I wish I could go back and if I could just sit down with even a handful of people who I know personally, one of my very dear friends, one of my closest friends who took his own life in February of 2019. I feel like if they could come back and do it over, that they would rethink it. And so for me, it's about making people who may be just teetering on that little line of, it's not worth it to go on anymore, to look at somebody like me and hear that I've clawed my way out of it, that perhaps they can too. And not just cops, not just military vets, because, I'm a Marine Corps veteran, right? So not just veterans, not just cops, first responders, but people. I feel like we are in the most mentally unhealthy emotional state that we've ever been as a country, even probably in the world. And I also know that there are so many people out there that really just don't understand how the opponent fights. If you think about it from the fighter's perspective, right? Because I'm a former fight champion, so I'm always talking fight game, right? Talking, not doing anymore. But Ronda Rousey, everybody thought she was just, nobody could beat her until somebody beat her, right? And then all of a sudden, it gave all these other women hope. When Holly Holm put her to sleep like that, then everybody was like, wait a minute, she's not indestructible, right? And everybody believed, even if for a moment, that they had a shot to beat, this champion. She's a great champion, right? So look at it from that perspective. If you think about an opponent who beats the shit out of people so much up one side and down the other that they are taking their own lives, then that's a pretty ruthless, vicious opponent. It's scary to think about. And if you can look at me and listen to me talking about how, hey, yeah, that some bitch kicked my ass for, so many years, but guess what? Motherfucker, I'm still here. Christy Martin said that in a Netflix documentary film. Christy Martin, very famous world champion woman fighter. And her husband tried to murder her. And she said something in this documentary film. She said when she was laying there, stabbed and shot by her husband, that she was trying to think of a way out. This gives me chills when I think about it, because I have to think about this just to remind myself sometimes of who the fuck I am, right? She said, you can, how did she word it? I'm going to paraphrase it, but she said, you can shoot me, you can stab me, but motherfucker, you can't kill me. And I remembered hearing her say that while I was traveling on a plane. I started to cry. The feeling that it gave me. Yes, girl, yes. Because life will throw you those punches. This job will throw you those punches. I've been down where I thought I wasn't going to be able to get up. And until I said, you can take half my left breast. You can take half my earlobe. You can take all of the emotional, happiness that I had. You can take the innocence from my children. You can kick the shit out of my marriage, but motherfucker, you can't kill me. If I can make people feel the way I felt when I heard her say that, if I can make people feel like fighters felt when they watched a massive champion, a worthy champion, be dethroned for the first time, give them that little glimmer of hope, oh, maybe I can win, then that's what I'm supposed to do. And I'll be honest with you, Dennis, I still feel like I don't really quite know everything I'm supposed to be doing with this. I don't even know.
I don't think anybody does.
No. But what I do know is
you're doing something,
I
right?
get the emails.
Right.
And I get the phone calls and the text messages, and I'm doing something. And that's a whole lot better than being on my knees, letting this opponent in the fight after the fight just take me out. Not going to take me out. My kids are watching, man.
I know. Well, it's, you're doing something instead of doing nothing.
I'm doing something.
We
doing
always
something.
tell people, because we try to explain from our perspective as instructors, like, guys, you might say, like, oh, I answered the call. Like, we did too. We took the responsibility of saying, we know that we can help all of you. We're doing our best. We all could have chose to do nothing. Doing something instead of nothing, you don't have to have a clear path or direction of where you're going, but we know what the result is when you do nothing. There's no question about it. Mm-hmm. We know what the result is. It's nothing.
Right.
So
I just love being able to, the fucking 6'4" tatted up SWAT cop who melts into my arms in tears because they're like, I've had enough, and I've never had anyone say to me, it's okay, like it's good. You've been to enough, shit calls you've earned yourself a good cry, like never made it okay. And to the young, rookie female cop, like it doesn't matter. Again, it's not a gender specific issue. It is, this opponent doesn't give a shit. And I know I've said this on your podcast before, but it's so true. It doesn't care if you're a woman. It doesn't care if you're a man. It doesn't care if you're in law enforcement or you're not. It doesn't care if you're gay, straight, white, black, Hispanic, Republican, Democrat. It doesn't care. One thing I know is everybody that has a pulse and is walking on this earth has been there. And so for that reason, I feel like I'm doing my part as a you go, I go. I live by that mantra right here. See, you go, I go. You go, I go. That means something to me. I don't really care at the end of the day, if you're a dude or if you're a chick or if you're a cop or not. I just want to give people some kind of hope during a time that
Seems hopeless.
it seems like a really helpless time. And if anyone's ever struggled with, the demons of public service, they understand how hard it can be to kind of pull yourself out of that.
It's interesting now, I feel like more than ever, as maybe hopeless as things feel at times, I don't recall in the last 22 years of me being associated with this profession, 21 and a half, whatever it is, of anybody like you or anybody else showing up to spread the message. Do you remember anybody coming to talk to you or getting on any kind of platform, whether it be the radio or even DVDs, to say, hey, like, it's some of this stuff is okay? So while people might think that we're going backwards in some sense, I think in other senses we're moving forward.
No, we are. I wouldn't say that we're moving backwards, at least not in this area. I'm sure one could argue that there are other parts of law enforcement where we feel like we're taking, steps backward. But that's not what we're talking about here. In this particular arena of, mental health and mental wellness and becoming self-aware in this area of trauma, really stress and trauma. I think we're taking steps forward. Baby steps, maybe. Other parts of the country, other agencies, I've been super impressed with how much training and how much value they really place in mental resiliency and emotional wellness and all of that. I've been super impressed to be able to work with some of those agencies. But no, to answer your question, no, I don't remember ever having anyone ever stand in front of me. Not when I enlisted in the Marine Corps at 18 years old. Not when I came into civilian policing. When I started policing was in the military, but when I came into my civilian career, I still had never had anyone just sit down with me and explain how this works. And here's the thing. I feel like if we did this, if we made it a priority to teach this to our young officers, how does traumatic stress work? How does this stuff affect the brain? What goes on in that brain? I feel like we'd be less afraid of it. It would be more normalized to talk about. Maybe we'd understand a little bit more where the anxiety attack is coming from. What exactly is happening inside of your body, both in your brain, your nervous system, all that. It's so crazy because once you understand it, I feel like you're not so scared of it. Oh, there you go, Mom. Mom's amygdala is swelling again. That's kind of like a little joke. And it was a little joke in my house. Once we all kind of understood where these symptoms and this behavior was coming from. But we just haven't done that, and we're starting to. And so for that reason, I think, yeah, we're taking steps forward for sure.
It's interesting.
Because do you know that?
About what?
Do you know? Like, just to even for people who are watching, like, do you know why people feel anxiety, or why people are having depression, or why they're super hypervigilant or extremely agitated and irritated all the time? You go home and you come home from work and your kids are running up, and you're like, give me a fucking minute here. Or you go lock yourself in your room and you kind of got to give yourself that moment. You can't just fall into your home and into the family unit. Do you know why these things are happening? Most people don't, but I do.
I try to acknowledge, and for me, at least, listen, I certainly found out recently that I was not indestructible and bulletproof. That's for sure. So I submit to that. I'm glad that I went through what I've been through. So that's one thing.
Yep.
Number two, I will also say that I have been fortunate enough to, in a family riddled with mental health issues, be spared for some reason. So while I understand what anxiety is, there is not many times in my life that I've experienced it. And actually, when I was experiencing panic attacks for the first time, I went to some of the people here. I went, "Oh my God, this is what you guys feel like?" They're like all the time, like, "Holy shit, this is fucked up."
Yep.
So I now understand it. Never felt depressed, even in my shittiest moments. Depression is not something I deal with. But I also am trying to really understand and be compassionate. So I can't speak on behalf of people who are unfortunately have a predisposition of some of these mental health, whatever you want to call them. I don't want to call them diagnoses, but they have to be aware that these are things that they're built into their genetics.
Right.
For me, what I really try to do is acknowledge these things before they occur. And last night's a perfect example. I got my fucking teeth kicked in here yesterday, and I was exhausted. So at 6:30, I was ready to go to sleep. It was a tough day here yesterday. Now, it wasn't tough in the sense where the world was killing me. It was a Monday, and there was a lot going on. And, you're coming here. It's the calm of the storm. It's 7:29. This place was in zoo again. I don't know how the fuck it became 7:29 at night. The girl who is my new assistant who just started, she's like, "This place is fucking nuts." And I'm like, "I'm telling you, people don't realize what goes on behind the scenes here." It's not nuts in the sense where she's like, "Literally, you guys don't even stop to eat." I'm like, "All day long, all we do, we're working, everybody here, nonstop, one thing to the next."
Right. Now,
last night when I went home, my daughter immediately started beating the life out of me, right? I was already pooped. But I've been conditioned myself to understand what was happening. I mean, the last thing in the world I wanted to do is have a 3.5-year-old pounding my balls by bouncing on my lap. And, she's in my face and she's squeezing my face. And I was tired. And I said to myself, they haven't seen their father all day. All they want to see is their dad. All they want to do is roughhouse with their father and goof off and play. And I'm getting, and I'd never say no. She's like, "Come on, come over here. I want to show you something." And she's like, "Hold my hand." And I'm like, "Okay." And now I'm getting off the couch. I'm like tired. I'm like, "All right, let's go." And, I'm saying to myself, don't miss these moments.
right.
Don't take what you're feeling and forget about. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, because one day she's not going to be this 3.5-year-old who wants to play with her dad.
Right.
Hopefully she's not going to be a 13-year-old who hates her father. Yeah. I don't suspect that I'm going to. People say, "Oh, you got to wait till they're 13. They're crazy." Yeah, but you got to understand something. Like, I'll also understand the psychology of being 13 as a girl, and try to understand that, and not take offense to what her behavior is going to be as she's learning about who she is as an adult. So, I think I'm better prepared because I'm better prepared.
Well, and you also had something to point your finger at. It was a fucking crazy day. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. Like, I just wanted to zonk out. So now, take all of that feeling and then take the crazy zoo of a day out of the equation and imagine the person who feels exactly that way, probably to the umpteenth degree, and has no reason why that they can put their finger on it. They just know that they're emotionally drained and exhausted. They're physically drained and exhausted. And they're like, "Fucking, I'm exhausted." All of the shit you just said, like times 10. And then somebody goes, "Well, why?" I don't know. And people around them start getting like annoyed with them. "You're fucking being lazy." Because you're exhausted. "I'm just fucking drained. I'm just tired." You ever meet somebody like that? They're just always tired. And you're like, because you kind of don't really do shit to be so damn tired, right? I've had to catch myself saying that shit to like even my daughter sometimes. The thing is, when somebody's dealing with a post-traumatic stress injury or any type of unresolved stress issues, traumatic stress, critical incidents, or whatever you want to call it, right? Because everybody has something. Imagine that you're feeling that way, but there's nothing. Like, there's nothing. It's like hearing this phone ring, but there's nothing there. And it's going to drive you nuts. Think about that. If you're hearing this phone ring, but you can't fucking figure out where this is coming from. It's the same thing. You felt drained. You felt super tired. But you had a crazy day. What about the person who doesn't understand that they're feeling like that because it's potentially issues with stress, unresolved stress. And let's just talk more specifically about trauma. Traumatic stress. It can make you feel like that. And then most people don't have an answer as to why. Like, why do you feel so tired? And they don't know why. And then add to that equation a little bit of fear. You ever been terrified and you have no fucking external reason why? You ever been in the safety of your own bed even, and just feel like, holy shit, this is me in my bed at some points in the aftermath of these things that I went through, sitting up and just being like, oh, and I feel it, and I know and see that there is no external threat. There's no environmental external threat at all. I'm safe. I'm in my house, in my bed, next to my husband. There's no reason, but I feel it. I feel terrified. So that, I think, is a huge part of why people stay silent. Because they don't understand what's going on. I now understand what's going on. If I can feel a little bit of a panic attack coming, a little bit of anxiety, and I can feel it, and I'm just like, I immediately feel myself feel it. I notice, I cue in on it, like when we see a threat on the streets, right? Bam, that guy walks in. We're talking to these guys, but that guy walks in, and for some reason, it's like, that one right there, that's my threat, right? And you hone in on it. Well, now this is internal, so I feel myself identify it. I kind of go right into it. I allow myself to feel it, and then I begin to go through my mental Rolodex of what is happening in my brain right now that's making me feel that way. And it's like, I feel like I'm in total control of it. And it's very empowering to get to a point like that. But, you talked about that feeling at home and how you have to hold yourself accountable. And kind of basically what you said, and I'm paraphrasing, is you're like, I got to check myself sometimes. I got to check myself and go, I have to be careful not to do X, Y, and Z to my kids because it can have an effect. Well, imagine when you can't identify it, there is nothing there to blame it on, and you're fucking doing all of the things to your kids and your family, and they're looking at you like, why are you yelling at me? And you're like, why are you mad at me? I'm not mad at you. And it's just because you don't have the answers. Shit, that's enough to drive somebody bananas, and it did. It drove me bananas for a lot of years, and until I right in front of my opponent, right? My post-traumatic stress opponent, until I was like, oh, all right, motherfucker, watch, let the bell ring, because I know what kind of counter punches I'm going to throw now. And it was just that aha moment, but I had to do the work to get there. I had to learn and study my opponent. This is why Sun Tzu says that. Sun Tzu, what does he say? You study your opponent. You know your opponent, right? You have to study your opponent. If you know yourself and you know your opponent, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. I ain't worried about it now. But when you don't know, boy, it's fucking scary.
What do you say to somebody who's dealing with that right now? How do they get to a point where they're back in control?
I say, you can win the fight after the fight. You can win. Ronda Rousey, the beautiful, amazing champion she was beatable. As ruthless and unbeatable as she appeared, she was beatable. So is this opponent in the fight after the fight, post-traumatic stress injury. It's beatable. Here's what I would say. Be willing to do the work. If you're willing to do the work, like for me, for example, I've been wanting to drop this, 60, 70 pounds off my ass for years. I've put it on the back burner as I've really worked on myself here. And now I've gotten to the point where, like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to address this. But I can want it all day long to lose the weight. And until I do the work, it's not going to come off, right? And the same thing applies. If you want to learn how to fight this opponent and win, you've got to be willing to do the work. And what does that work look like? Well, that's exactly why I teach the classes I teach. The Fight After the Fight, 3 Rounds and Counting, talks about my story, the journey, the shootings, everything in between, and the battle. The Fight After the Fight, Train to Win, really goes into the depth on how we can beat it, right? And then, of course, the third part to the series is the Fight After the Fight Through a Child's Eyes, which is the third part to the series, the most recent one that we recently launched. And it is basically me presenting with my now adult children who actually give their perspective. Because think about it. you know, in that moment when you're tired and you don't really want to play with your little baby girl, but the impact it can have on her if you handled it differently, like, not right now, not right. You do that enough to a little girl and she's going to grow up with daddy issues or, some kind of problem, right? But you get to hear this from my kids. You get to hear what these traumas have done to them and how those childhood traumas followed them into their young adult lives, because they're now 19 and 28. So I would say do the work. Understand what it is, who the opponent is, how the opponent fights. Who the opponent is, how the opponent fights. Understand that to do the work doesn't always necessarily mean that you have to put money out. Because I know a lot of people say, well, I can't afford to go to therapy, right? All right. First of all, there's a lot of affordable ways to get therapy. Therapy is just one way to do the work. People stories, researching, everything is at our fingertips now on the internet. Do your research. Reach out to people who have been there, fought this opponent, and won. If I know that Dennis fought Frankie, last year and was victorious, dethroning this champion, and I know I'm about to fight Frankie, guess who I'm going to go spar with? Fucking Dennis. So rely on your battle buddies. Rely on those sparring partners who have been in the ring with that opponent and have been victorious. It's not as hard as I think people think. I think they just have to be willing to get out of their own fucking way. Cops, we tend to be kind of control freakish, and we need to check that ego, and kind of allow yourself to make friends with your own vulnerability, because you're going to need to do that.
When you started saying what you were saying, I wrote down surrender to win. Right? Yeah. So that's part of the first step, is like you got to surrender. To the fact that this is how you're going to win. You've got to surrender first.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. You can't be afraid to fall on your face. And I certainly don't want to ever give the impression to anybody, and I say this often, that I'm shitting sunshine and rainbows over here. Because every single day is not a great day for me, right? No. If I had the fucking magic pill for work-life balance, and, I'd be incredibly wealthy, right? Every day is not a great day. I think that the main difference is that my perspective on my shit days now, my perspective, the way that I look at them, my mindset. It's a shitty day, but I'm not going to unpack and stay here. I'm going to let myself feel it. I might even let myself have a moment, but I'm not going to unpack and stay here, because I understand what's going on in here and in here. And I also know that, even the most amazing of champions, they've how many rounds have they lost in the ring or in the octagon before they went on to win their championships? How many shots did, the late Kobe Bryant miss, right? He missed tons of them. I mean, I think he's even got a famous quote out there about how many he missed. All the shots, that he missed, he had to take those shots in order to miss them, right? So you have to be willing to surrender to win. You have to be unafraid to be punched in your motherfucking face. You have to be unafraid of that, because you're going to get punched in your face anyway, right? So why not just understand how he's going to punch you, and what effect will that punch have, and what effect does it not have? I mean, I'm just a girl that's figured it out. And now it doesn't scare me. And I want to teach people how to do that. So that's why. It's another reason why I do what I do.
What kind of trauma did your kids receive from your trauma?
There's this thing, a very real thing that I think isn't really talked about or known, especially in the law enforcement communities, that we should be very aware of. And it's called secondary or vicarious trauma. It depends on who you ask. It's secondary traumatization. And basically what that is when somebody who's exposed repeatedly to somebody else's trauma, they're at risk for experiencing the symptoms of that trauma. So, for example, if, you have the flu and you sneeze on this table, and I work side by side with you long enough, every day, a week or a few days, at some point, the germs you sneeze on this table and in this room are I'm going to breathe it in, I'm going to absorb it, and then I'll get sick. Well, that's pretty much the same thing with secondary trauma. And I'm just breaking it down like really easy, right? So that people understand. So let's talk about what some of the symptoms I've had that I've openly acknowledged. I struggled with anxiety. I struggled with severe, almost debilitating hypervigilance. I had stomach issues where I was, I couldn't shit, I couldn't poop, and then, I was pooping all the time and I couldn't stop, and I couldn't keep my food in when I could eat. I couldn't keep it in, and I would throw up because I had such bad stomach issues, right? Hair falling out, shaky, sweaty, my libido just drop down, completely out. Some people just naturally have very low sex drives, right? But if you're noticing that is a massive change in you, then that's something to pay attention to. So all of these things, just throwing myself at work, but outside of work, isolating, extremely irritated and angry, full of rage, all of these things, right? So because my children had such a close relationship with me and were in such close proximity of me, they too began to struggle with these things. So you have what everybody else has. You have your way. Frankie has his way. I have my way of coping. If anyone's ever been divorced, or if anyone's ever had work deadlines, or been to a critical call at work, or loss of a loved one, whatever the life stress is, you have your way of coping. For some people, it's drinking all the time. For other people, it's drugs. For others, it's gambling. For some people, it's reckless sexual behavior. For others, it's shopping. So everybody has their way. And my children too were no exception. So when my opponent's attacking me, my children, and I'm exhibiting these symptoms, because of their repeated exposure to my trauma, not just through seeing it physically, watching me go through these surgeries, but also the news. It's all over the news. And they're seeing me going through these changes at home. They start to exhibit some of the same behaviors. My son started to lose his hair. He became extremely withdrawn, and he became very angry. And he began to be extremely angry at the culture, law enforcement culture. He started to self-medicate with alcohol, with drugs. He took this mindset because he looked at me and thought, you're fucking being reckless. My then 18-year-old and 19-year-old, a year later son, was like, this is reckless. For you to get shot and then get in the car and drive into, that's reckless. That's stupid. When the rest of the world's going, wow, that's fucking badass. That was great. Stay in the fight. He doesn't understand that culture. All he knows is mom was okay. She got her titty shot off and her face shot, and she's okay. And she, instead of waiting there, she hops in the car to go catch these guys, right? So he got very angry about that. And so what he thought was, well, if you're going to be reckless, I'm going to be reckless. And he didn't give a shit. He just didn't give a shit. And so he went that path, drugs and alcohol, anger, reckless, behavior. My daughter went into another way where she internalized everything. Little girls were very different. I don't know if you know this. Girls are very different from boys, Dennis.
Still learning.
And she internalized, and she had one of her ways of coping was that she became very agreeable, very pleasing. Whatever pleases mom, whatever makes mom feel supported, whatever makes mom not mad, right? So everything's fine, everything's great, we're all good. And that's what she did. And so her outlet for that is that when nobody was looking, my baby girl started cutting.
Oh, shit.
She stopped eating. She began cutting. She was not suicidal. She'll tell you. She talks about it in the presentation. For me, it was not being suicidal. I wasn't trying to kill myself. I didn't want to kill myself. But I wanted to release what felt like a fucking... can you imagine holding a fart for 5 fucking years? How bad that would hurt? So she had to cut a little, let some of that gas out, that energy out. And I didn't understand it. And when I found out, I was devastated. I had no idea how difficult it had become for them. And I didn't know that because nobody ever taught me. And so they struggled with anxiety, depression, drugs. Like my ex-husband, his way was reckless sexual behavior. Everybody has their way. I threw myself into work and just gave into a love affair with my own anger. I was fucking full of rage all the time, and I was an asshole to everybody around me except my partners at work. And so, I mean, what kind of message does that send my family, right? So yeah, they experienced pretty much everything that I did in their own way. And I wish that I had somebody to explain that to me, because I could have saved us all probably a lot of heartache. But at the same time, it's like, but if I would have known the answers then, maybe, I wouldn't have, it wouldn't have been such a valued lesson. You know what I mean? Like, I needed to get knocked on my ass.
I think everybody does.
I needed to.
Yeah.
Because the woman that I am now, I don't think I'd be this woman had I not gone there. I had to go there to get here.
I think something you and I both share is that we have really recognized and acknowledged what judgment is.
Yes.
And we're able to not judge as much as we once did. I think we still judge in some sense.
I think it's natural for anybody to judge in some sense.
I think that it's some of it's very, I think we all make judgment calls at some point. We look at things and say, oh, it must be that.
I find myself being judgy with myself.
Right. But you have to understand, and actually it's a real significant life skill to learn what judgment is and to be able to look beyond that judgment as to what the cause was. So there's like this saying, like, they're acting that way because somebody's kicking their butt in the background. And it could be anything. I don't have it. I'm not going to read it because I've read it on the podcast many times, but 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't read this before, read the Subway excerpt. You can just Google that and read that. And that actually changed my life. So that paradigm shift for the author changed that for my life. So when I see things, I try to understand why somebody would do that, why things are this way, why did that happen? And I don't mean in the sense of like, why did a massacre occur? I'm talking about like, why did that person who I think loved me or loves me do that to me? And, I just revealed something to somebody close to me in my life, and they said, well, I had no idea. I go, that's why I've not engaged with a lot of people, because I feel like I'm being judged constantly. I don't like the feeling of judgment. A lot of people don't. And they have to acknowledge it. If you don't like being judged, if you're saying to yourself, well, people don't know what I'm going through, well, how could you possibly know what people are going through as well? So, that's a real significant life skill to try to say, I wonder what caused that person to do that. When I see these cops who get caught with a DWI or DUI, whatever you want to call it, we're all so quick to immediately go to, oh, this fucking dummy. He should have known better. There's Uber. Yeah, so there's some truth to that. But how would your perception change if I would have told you that what you didn't know is that he lost his daughter, who was 2 years old in a car crash 3 weeks prior to this incident occurring? Would you see him differently?
You never know.
Would you see him differently?
Right.
So I think about how big of a skill it is to have non-judgment and a lot of compassion. And it's a very hard thing. You have to work at it. It's not easy. And I got to tell you, I'm even getting frustrated with myself a little bit because I was really good with it for a while, and I'm trying to get back to it. I'm still pretty good, but like I had extreme compassion where people are actually acknowledging and admiring how non-judgmental I was. And believe me, I came from just about the most judgmental family in the history of the United States of America. I mean, literally a mother who'd be on the phone talking shit about everybody in the neighborhood to a neighbor. And I'm literally like 8 years old. I can tell you.
And you know everybody's business. Yeah.
The behavior was terrible.
Right.
And what happened was I began to mimic it. And I would say things that I heard. And I would say things like, oh, this person this. Oh, the most judgmental stuff in the world. It's crazy.
It's funny you say this.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think that's why that's a huge part of why this is a freaking problem within our culture in the first damn place. Because people are judgy, and people will judge someone that says, 3 people, you, me, and Frankie go to the same call. It's a terrible call. It's a difficult one, some of the worst you could think of. And then we all 3 clear that call, and next week, Frankie's okay. Seems to be unscathed. Me, I'm stepping forward. But you're having a little problem moving past that call. You can't eat very much. You're not sleeping since that call. You know what I'm saying? Maybe fast forward another month or so and you're still struggling with that. And it looks like we've moved forward. And so then you go say to Frankie when we're sitting down to having chow, like, you still struggling with that? Because, man, I'm traveled sleeping, right? And then he's like, no, I'm good. And he's like, you having trouble? And you're like, I was, but I think it's getting better because now you're going to backpedal because now you're feeling judged. And what about you, Ann? Because, see, now I'm the only girl at the table, right? And the ladies understand this. It is what it is. Women tend to be the more emotional of the two. So a lot of times the men that we work alongside with are always looking at us to be the one to break down emotionally during difficult calls. So you might look at me and go, what about you, Ann? And I'm like, no, I'm pretty good. I'm fine. So now what? So now you ain't going to say shit anymore because you're worried about being judged. And then maybe later, Ann walks over or Frankie walks over to somebody else and be like, oh my God, Dennis is fucking still struggling with this call. Like he wasn't even there as long as me and Ann were. He got there later. He was only on fucking location for like 10 minutes. How many times have we heard this? Right? We've heard this. Mm-hmm. Hey, he was only there 5 fucking minutes. What is he so upset about? Right? We're being judgmental. And so now people shut up and then they suffer in silence and then maybe later take their own lives. And those same motherfuckers are sitting there going, well, damn, wonder what happened to him. We would be wrong not to question our own culture. Are we part of the problem here?
Hey guys, if you're enjoying the Street Cop podcast, do us a favor and give us a review on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you're listening to us. Tell a friend. We don't charge anything for the episodes. We appreciate your support. Check us out on any social platform by putting into the search bar Street Cop Training. Give us a follow. We have a lot of free content coming out every single day that you might not catch here on the podcast, and it's important for you to be able to do your job more professionally, and we also entertain you as well. It's funny, as we're talking, I can tell you something where my wife, who's really had just brought a whole different perspective of life to me. I always thank her for that. There's a lot of things that I can appreciate about that woman. So for years, I watched my parents engage in certain behaviors and, you mimic them, right? And this is when they're bad, you become that. And it's embarrassing. I've actually had to say to some of my friends, like, I apologize for the things that I did. You got to understand where that came from. And whatever it was, that's what I watched. That's what I was surrounded by. But I'll tell you one thing that I used to do, and it's very interesting on the judgment. When we would have some kind of engagement, maybe for our kids, or our kid, because I learned this after my first son. I'll tell you the story. So we have a christening for my oldest, I believe it was. We come back with all these gifts. So in New Jersey, people are very thoughtful. I know that that's not the same everywhere else, but
just
gifts,
like that in Texas.
Okay.
For the record.
I was in Arizona, and I was hearing that people were like getting engagement gifts and they're like $10 in a card. I'm not trying to be judgmental about that, but if it costs more to eat McDonald's than give somebody an engagement gift, there's a problem,
you're
right?
Kind of
I'll be a little.
Yeah, I'm gonna call you out on that. Gee, thanks.
If it's one person who says I don't have it, but like collectively, that's the group thought of what a thoughtful gift is, and somebody's most profound moment or special moments in their life, there's an issue. Well, anyway. I go home after the christening of my oldest, and now I have a lot of cards. We had a big party, right? And this is New Jersey, everybody's Italian. So I start opening cards, and I go, oh, look, my aunt gave us $250. She cares. And then I said, this one's not bad, like $100. How many people came? It was 2 of them. Cost us $30 a plate, right? That's 50. So we made a little money on that. That's good. So I'm going through this. She goes, what the fuck are you doing? I go,
your wife says this to you?
Yeah. So I'm doing this, and I go, look at this fucking check. Look at this motherfucker. Are you fucking kidding me? You brought fucking 5 people to this place and showed up with a $50 check?
Really?
Yeah, it's real. Now I didn't mean to be doing this.
I know.
And she goes to me, what are you doing? And I said, don't you think it's ridiculous that this person came here with 5 people? It cost us money to have them at this fucking event. They're not being thoughtful. Because we're off all the time around here. We're like, hey, what should I give at a wedding?
Yeah.
You want the bride and groom to make money, but unfortunately, the weddings have gotten nuts.
Yeah.
Like, I can tell you right now, I know for a fact that at one of the bigger venues here, I just heard from somebody who I know is wealthy because they're paying for, the father-in-law is paying for the sister-in-law's wedding. It's like $699 a plate at this one place now. Right, $6.99 a plate.
A plate.
How could you ever give a gift and expect them to make money on it? Thank God the father's paying for everything, so everything this girl gets is going to go in her bank account. But how could you say to your wife or husband, even me, who's doing a little better, like, yeah, we're going to give $2,000 right, for this fucking thing. I wouldn't even go. Like, I can't go. I'm sorry. Like, if you want $2,000 for me to come eat fucking dinner and listen to the fucking Runaround Sue and do the YMCA for a night, yeah, the wedding venue's beautiful. I get it. Well, anyway, she said to me, she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "What?" And she's like, "Do you realize how fucking ridiculous this is?" She's like, "You're literally sitting here." She's like, "Why can't you just look at it like we were fortunate enough to have them show up? Why are you fucking doing this?" And I'm like, I literally went, "Oh my God, I never saw it that way," because I've endured years of watching
certain
this
type of behavior.
Well, yeah, my father was the king of this,
Yeah.
and on top of the crazy thing, he was the most hypocritical motherfucker in the world. Oh, this person's cheap. They don't fucking. And I'd say, "You're the cheapest person I know." My father's one of the cheapest people in the world. It was ridiculous. And he would say, "Oh, this broke." I go, "Dad, the regular one of those is $100 when you don't cheap out. You pay $10 for it.
Right.
So that's why you got 3 uses out of it. And the other one you would have bought 100, you got a lifetime out of it." I go,
But look at that behavior.
Yeah.
That hypocritical behavior and its remnants, its effects on you, what you got out of that, and then what you paid forward. It's exactly what's happening to law enforcement officers across the fucking nation. Hey, I want you to go out there and handle everybody's problems and bring calm to the chaos. But we're not going to tell you how to do that for yourself. You're on your fucking own there.
well, first of all, they don't even tell them how to do it professionally.
You know what I'm
and
saying?
you don't even get trained.
Yeah, I know.
Let's step outside of that and
let's
just say,
step
like,
outside the box. You could do this all day long.
yeah, I'm
But
just saying, like, we're talking about the mental side of it, but like, let's also start with, like, you haven't even been prepared to do this job, period. Everybody
Right.
went to an academy that at the end, you got on stage, you did this fucking ceremony, you went, "I wonder what police work is. I'm here for 6 months. What does a bad guy look like?" Right? Could you imagine? Right?
And
It's
see,
nuts.
I'm hearing him and I'm thinking of the other fight. What does that bad guy look like? No one ever told me.
Yeah. I'm
Because it
saying,
doesn't
yeah.
have a life form. It doesn't have a life form. You know what I'm saying? So is all of this other street cop training important? Fucking A, it is. Yeah. Right? Listen, I tell you my reasons and my beliefs of why I'm alive, but I know damn good and well I had to be ready for that moment.
Oh, sure.
I had to be prepared tactically, mentally. I had to be prepared, and I was, and I executed the way I had performed it in my brain, right? Tactical performance imagery, and what I did that night, I'd done a million times in my head,
Right.
over and over.
Very good.
Right? But not with this.
I know.
Not with this opponent. It was like I'm standing in the ring and I'm taking a beating and I'm like, "Where are you at, motherfucker?" But I can't see it, right? So it's about coming to the place where you can give it a life form. You're talking, it's so interesting because I kind of feel like this is what I do. I do this a lot now. Like, I can hear people when they're talking about training, its focus is here, but it's got to be all encompassing.
I agree.
How can we expect to produce a higher quality officer, a well-rounded officer who's going to understand how to deal with someone a little better that's dealing with mental illness or mental issues or post-traumatic stress, or who's going to understand the true art form and the true dynamic to de-escalation or to communication if they don't understand the whole fucking thing?
Exactly. And you can train and get better at that. And I got to tell you, I think just like me and a lot of people, and probably even yourself, we look back at the young officer and we're like, oh, if you only had the compassion you had now. And later on, as you go in your career, you're very proud of those moments where you didn't act the same as you once did because you're showing up with a different attitude towards most of these calls. I get you got to be on guard. You got to have your guard up. You don't want to lose your life in the line of duty. But there are a lot of times where, man, it's going to serve you really well to put your guard down. Mm-hmm. Once you've established some safety parameters, to sit and have compassion will... and that's draining after a night of having compassion. But, like, that's the rewarding part when you can say, I didn't judge. Nobody who calls the police wants you to show up and judge. That's probably why, even as a cop, I'm like, man, like, I've actually had to call the police to my house. And I'm like, fuck, man, like, I'm the fucking street cop guy. Of course people are showing up. They're like, "Oh, dude, no fucking way. This is where you live." And I'm like, yes. But there's a problem right now. And it wasn't a domestic issue. I have a significantly ill brother, and who was having I'm talking significantly ill. The mere sight, you would know that something was very wrong with him. And I had to call for help because for 45 minutes, it was just out of control. It was a chaotic scene. And by the way, it's the story of my life. People don't know that, So for me to even call the police knowing that I've been on the other side of that, saying like, who the fuck knew we were going to come to this guy's house? This guy
But see how this can be so powerful?
Right.
How you you, who's somebody that is looked at that way, that they're going, oh my God, it's this guy, and this is your house, like, and you're living this
And
experience.
I'm literally saying to them, I'm like, okay, guys, cool. You'll get T-shirts later. I need help.
Right. But
Like,
what
yeah.
I'm saying is, like, a man that is not only, publicly recognized, but you're also dealing with this in your personal life. Now, could you imagine how much weight that would hold to share that with? I'm not saying, stand on the stage and tell everybody your business, but what I'm saying is,
I'm like
it's the people like you. It's the people like the Ronda Rouseys that have been knocked on their ass, for Ronda Rousey to get back up and go, wow, this is what I learned from that. That's pretty much, you could really help somebody with that experience. And that's all I'm trying to do. Instead of jumping to the judgment, for me, I just immediately go, something's going on there. Something's going on there. Even when I meet people that are super passionate about this topic, about awareness and mental health, and I always go like, why? Why are you so passionate about this?
Listen.
I'm always interested to hear, because
there's a reason why I'm passionate about the topic. Because I'm a victim of what this system was, in some sense, if you really think about it. And I'm not the victim mentality, but I experienced all the shit that I'm calling out, because I don't want to see it anymore, because I don't want to see anybody else go through what I went through.
Right. I did notice that about you. You call yourself out a lot, which is a good thing. I say that when I'm speaking, I'm like, there comes a time where we've got to stop doing this and start doing this, right? It was a game changer for me when I started doing that. I still have to call myself on some shit sometimes. It's an everyday struggle to try to, be what you say you are all about, right? Sometimes we all fall short of what we say we stand for. But to acknowledge that and then just dust yourself off and get back on track, that takes a special type of character.
I think it takes training, man, and dedication to becoming that new person, and I think it means a lot to a lot of people when you can be that new person.
Yeah.
I mean, even us taking the time to do this tonight, it speaks volumes to both of us.
But why do you do it? Why do you want to have,
same reason you do it.
Because I imagine you get the feedback, right? You guys get the feedback.
It's the same exact reason. It's no different. And that's why we're cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
It's the same exact reason. Right?
Yeah.
Just this. And also, this stuff is great, and I love it, and it's for that reason. Then I have other reasons, like I like the challenge. I like this. I like to. I
like having Ann on my show.
Yeah. But I'm saying there's other stuff too. It's not just all this, but I think that answer constantly changes. But I think the one
that's a good one
thing that never changes is the overall purpose. So in my mind, when people ask me that question, there's always like this pie chart, and the majority is like, because it means so much to everybody else, and then like this little fucking sliver. I don't want to say a little sliver. Maybe 30% of it is other reasons.
Right.
But I think overall, when you calculate all of it, it comes back down to, I feel like I can do so much for so many people that it'd be a fucking shame if I didn't. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure at the end of this whole fucking game that I had no regrets, and I can say to anybody, namely my children, maybe my grandchildren at the time, I did everything I could. And I know I didn't leave anything on the table. I did everything I could. And this is what happened when I did everything I could. And half of that's for you and half of that's for me, because I want to die peacefully.
Yeah. You talk about die peacefully. I really am at a point in my life with all of it where I truly understand, the whole, there's a church hymn called "It Is Well With My Soul" that we used to sing in church. And we would sing from this hymn book, and there's a song, "It Is Well With My Soul." And I really feel like I'm there, like, it's good, I'm good. Like, I feel at peace in a lot of ways. And there's still some things I want to work on. I don't feel finished. That's not what I mean, but I feel at peace.
I
Talking
understand.
about dying and feeling at peace. I'm not perfect. If you wrote a list of 5 things on a piece of paper, the shitty things you could do in life, I've probably done all 5.
Probably 23.
We'll say 5. But
you're not letting your past dictate your future, right?
No. And here's the thing. If people could just change their relationship with vulnerability, I think it could be a game changer in the way that law enforcement officers across the country and around the world, probably even, it would really change the way that we attack this massive problem within our culture that is the fight after the fight, taking us out one by one by one by one. People don't want to be vulnerable. If you think about it, vulnerability will get your ass killed on the job. And so it's not something we're good at. But I'm at peace, and I feel like when I leave this earth, I will have left behind two amazing children who understand that people are just people, and they'll disappoint you sometimes, and you as a person will disappoint someone you love sometime. And it's about, perspective, and it's about righting the wrongs and just being the best person that you can be. But most importantly, just really looking at adversity from a different lens. Like life throws you a shit sandwich, you eat that like it's a filet mignon. You know what I mean? You learn to love it, because you will know that on the other side of that is really something that's amazing, that it's an opportunity for you to really become a better version of yourself. So I really have taught my children that, not just through my words, but through my examples, through my bad examples, as well as my good ones. I'm super proud of my kids, and while they are navigating through a lot of the shit that was thrown at them when they were kids, now that they're adults and they're learning to articulate that pain, that I'm watching them grow, and it just makes me so proud. Man, I could die tomorrow, and I would feel that I did what I was supposed to do. I did my job here.
I say that sometimes.
Yeah, I did my job.
Hopefully I left enough people educated to carry on
Yeah.
what we believe is, for me, in the profession.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's enough seeds planted now where I'm like, shit, if something happened, I at least could die knowing that, like, there's going to be crops growing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You reap what you sow, right? And I'm sowing, and I'm just trying to do it in a way that it's not just for me. I get a lot of joy out of that. I get a lot of joy out of, just giving it to other people.
You said filet mignon. We're wrapping this motherfucker up now.
Before we go, what's your biggest takeaway from our conversations that we've had this far?
What people get out of it.
Expand really quick on that. What do you mean what people get out of it?
I know that me and you get to a place where I think a lot of people who are listening to this probably get the same feeling they get when in your program, of feeling that what they're feeling is okay, and learning about themselves and trying to improve who they are, because they're listening to people who they admire and how they display characteristics that probably speak to how they see themselves wanting to be. And I think that's how we go through life. We find better examples and we follow those examples. And every day you might find a new example of who to follow. So you set an example.
My biggest takeaway is that high performers, sometimes I think that people who perform at a high level, whether it's professionally or personally or whatever it is, I think high performers, I think they struggle with allowing themselves grace a lot more than I even realized. I knew that before, but with talking with you, I think that my biggest takeaway would be how afraid we are to allow ourselves that grace. You know what I'm saying? And I know that feeling of feeling decompressed after having some of these conversations with you. So I would say that's one of my biggest takeaways from talking with you is remember that those high performers, those ones out there that don't maybe look like they struggle at all. They work hard and they earn the benefits, and that's great. But to remember that, don't always pay attention to ones who look like they're outwardly struggling.
Yeah, I try to be as clear as possible, and I can't share every detail, but I try to continue to let people see that. And almost every podcast, I think I talk about, I'm no different than you, and I have my own problems, and it's how I see my problems, I think, that changes how I handle my problems. And often people say to me, "How you doing?" I go, "I got a million problems like everybody else in the world, but I'm the luckiest guy you'll ever meet." Yeah. Right? So I acknowledge that I'm certainly not absolved, and I look at anybody. Actually understand the psychology of a lot of these people who do have a lot of success, and I really get what they go through and how hard this shit is from the mental standpoint.
Because you have to think about it. Sometimes I think when we're talking about this problem, we oftentimes are thinking about the boot draggers, the knuckle draggers, the ones out there, boots to the pavement.
No, I think it's everybody.
It's everybody. We know that it's everybody, but we got to keep it in mind. These chiefs, these sheriffs, these command staffs, like they struggle too.
I get it, but I think that they also have to understand that what we're saying to you is what we're saying to you is you have a choice. And
right.
Your first choice was you were going to take on this position.
Yeah.
Now, if you're stuck at that choice and you don't want to relinquish that position, I think the next choice is like, okay, well, with this came responsibility, and the responsibility to learn how to lead and how to behave appropriately. And I'm also setting the example to have compassion for these this goes across the board for everybody.
Right.
So yeah, you took on a role. You don't want to give it back because it's embarrassing. Maybe you're in over your head, but nobody's sending a lifeboat and outlandish lashing out behavior and misbehavior is not the solution to it. And that's the underlying message is why should any of this stuff reflect you when you know that you can make change? And I'm not sitting here saying, well, you knew better. But the reality is when you took those chevrons, when you took those bars, with it came responsibility that you might not have been aware of. And let's face it, nobody's giving them back. Nobody says, I don't want these anymore. I'm going to go do something else. Nobody's going to do that. So yeah, I understand compassion of a lot of friends, but I also understand that you have to put effort into something for it to be, and again, I say it all the time, nobody's sending a lifeboat. You're going to have to try to figure some of this out we talked about it earlier.
Yep.
You're going to have to pick your ass up and unfuck yourself a little bit. And if you're a boss who's getting their butt kicked, right? Like, don't forget, you chose to be the boss. There's inherent responsibility with that. But at a very minimum, people know that you're making decisions with your heart. You could make a bad decision, but as long as people know that you're making decisions with your heart, they'll forgive you for that. Your men and women, when they know who you are at your core, will give you a pass a lot of times for making a bad call. But then when they know when you're behaving with self-interest only at all times, or you and your 4 fucking boys at the top, who you guys are this clique, and you don't let anybody in your inner circle, and you guys think you're fucking gods, don't forget they see that shit too.
Yeah.
So you've got to. We know that leadership is the number one chief complaint, and honestly, I hate to say, but it all rolls down from the top. Yeah. So when you have a chief who's happy, and you're going to have patrolmen who are happy, you're going to have midline supervisors who are happy. I get it; it's not easy being the chief, getting your butt kicked, but it's not easy being anybody. So it doesn't give you this fucking card to misbehave.
No, I don't think anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I screamed that at my dad once,
Sure.
Just because you have PTSD doesn't give you a ticket to be an asshole to everybody.
Listen, somebody
right?
said, I know a Medal of Honor winner told me that.
That's just from this perspective, right? The mental health area. But I always do try to remember, like, when I look at situations like we talked about with the young female officer and the other officers, I always think, where does that come from? Let's look beyond that. Whenever I see
but at some
breakdown,
point, you are the boss.
No, absolutely.
And you have to fucking fix this.
I agree with you.
Right? And if you don't want to do it, then step aside because there's a guy who's ready to do it, a girl ready to do it.
I agree with you.
So like, yeah.
But I think it also provides an opportunity for us to get on board and learn about all this stuff together, not just having that.
If they're willing.
And
that's the problem.
Right.
And what we're saying is, we get it. You're not willing to listen. You want to stick your fingers in your ears and run away. And everybody else suffer and is at a detriment because of that behavior. No good. But what I'm saying to the next chief in the rank and file, take account for what this guy made you feel like, what this woman made you feel like. And don't forget that shit because you're the next person up. You don't know it now. You're 20 years out.
Right.
But don't forget how this person made you feel.
Right.
Because I can't talk to that guy anymore. He don't want to listen.
Right.
I can't does he have problems? Everybody's got problems. And I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve compassion. But when you have somebody that you can't literally will not listen to you, what else are we supposed to do except acknowledge it and just know for the future?
Right.
If you like this, it's like having an abusive household. You want to beat the shit out of your wife like your father beat the shit out of you. Would you like when your father beat the shit out of your mother? If you didn't like it, don't do it again.
Right.
Right. And you can take that in one of two ways. You can either become an abuser or become somebody who would never do that.
Right.
And like I'm an example of it.
My son uses this as an example. You have two brothers, right? Same father. Dad was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
One of the brothers goes on to become, pretty much a no good for nothing drunk, and the other one goes on to be successful and never drinks.
Yep.
And then when you ask them, why are you fucking drunk? Because my dad was an alcoholic. Yeah, it's a successful one. Why are you not a drunk? Why are you successful? Because my dad was an alcoholic.
Right.
Boom.
I know how people made me feel in my life.
Yeah.
I know what kind of parents I grew up
Yeah.
with, and I swear to God, that's why last night when I get my nuts smashed, and if you don't have kids yet, you're gonna get your nuts smashed in. Do you know yet? Have you learned that yet? Yeah, you don't have nuts, you won't know. I mean, I must have been hitting the nuts.
I have nuts. They're
Yeah.
just on the inside.
Yeah.
They're called ovaries.
600
Right,
fucking
ladies?
times I've had my nuts smashed. I have 4 kids, right? But I take my.
We get our chi-chis smashed.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't feel sorry for your nuts,
Okay, I'm not
buddy.
asking for I'm not asking for fucking compassion about it. I'm just acknowledging that you're going to be a dad. Your nuts are getting smashed nonstop.
Nonstop.
So my wife and I both say the same thing. We take what we experience from these people who raise us, and unquestionably did a piss poor job, and then we say, that's why last night I know what it was like to be that 3.5-year-old whose father didn't want to fucking bother with them.
And you remembered.
I don't forget that. I just don't forget how my father didn't want to give a fuck.
And that's your opportunity.
I'm not saying he
to
didn't
break-
love me.
It's that opportunity for you to break that generational dysfunction.
I'm not saying my father didn't love me. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm just saying that the behavior and being on the receiving end of the behavior of a person like that, I will not put people through what I went through. And she's the same way. My wife says, well, we always talk about this stuff, but I'm like, look, man, you went through, life happened for you, not to you.
Right.
And maybe you wouldn't be because you're a phenomenal mother.
Right.
You wouldn't be the mom that you are today if you didn't know what it was like to feel the other side of it.
Right.
Neglected.
Right.
It was a horrible fucking life for her too. Really sad state of affairs. And the crazy thing is she's still dealing with like some of these people not acknowledging that. It's fucked up.
Yeah.
Right. And it's still like even me, like my parents are still here. It's fucked up.
Yeah.
But I don't want my kids to feel that way. And being a parent's interesting because you're trying to do the best for your kids and navigate them appropriately. Did I give them too much? Did I give them too little? When do I make them fucking clean up? When is it not a big deal? You're playing this game, you're just like trying to create these good human beings, but I can at least say that my kids they're good because when I see them with other people's kids and other people, they're phenomenal. I'm proud of that, even at such a young age. Anyway, let's get the fuck out of here. Come on.
Let's get out of here, Frankie.
See you guys. Guys, if you're in an area where you're trying to get to our classes, but we're not close to you, fret not. We actually have on-demand training at streetcop.com. You can take that course online right now, and then you could attend that training in the future at no additional cost. You can redeem your voucher, so you get 2 for the price of 1. We don't want to deny you the ability to take this training now, especially knowing that it can keep you safe at a very minimum, putting bad guys in jail where they belong, and at the maximum, going home to your family. Check out streetcop.com for that offer.